Our Computex 2024 coverage is made possible by Asus, G-Skill, Fantex, Team Group, LIAN Li, ASRock, Corsair, XPG, Thermaltake, Clev, Montech, and Seasonic. Alrighty guys, we are still at it. It is Computex day one. Now of course, being LIAN Li, we have some awesome cases coming out. We're also checking out their revamped RGB software. They have their wireless RGB L-Connect, which is something I'm really interested in. And then we are going to look at an all-in-one cooler as well. Starting off over here, we have the O11 Vision Compact. Now these come in black and white. So the difference here to the original O11 Vision, these are a little bit smaller. They're more in line with the very original O11 Dynamic in terms of sizing. Now, one feature that I do like that you do get, if you are familiar with the O11 Vision, you get the tempered glass on the front, the side, and on the top. So what they've done here, they've included a mesh top. So if you want to put a radiator or fans at the top, on the original Vision, you had glass at the top, so you couldn't do that. So this one comes with the mesh, so you can put that on. I'll get some close-ups, but to do that, you do have to put this bracket. So that will allow you to convert the glass top into the mesh top. So it comes with both. It comes stock with the glass, and then it also comes with the mesh kit, so you can convert that. Some other changes are also, I'll move over here to this white one. It does have a large grommet on the motherboard tray, and you might be wondering what this funky tubing is for this all-in-one cooler. So this is just a standard all-in-one cooler, but what they've done is they've actually reversed it. So instead of the tubes coming out and then looping around and being a bit messy, they've actually flipped it around, shot the tubes out the back, and then that's actually run through this massive grommet that runs to the all-in-one cooler, and it just makes it a little bit neater. And one last change with the O11 Vision Compact is it now supports your back connect, so that's for your BTF and your MSI Project Zero, and as you can see, all of the cutouts for those motherboards. This one here is the Lancool 217, so a few changes here, of course. As you can see, they've gone with that walnut aesthetic. I want to know your thoughts on that. Are you guys moving towards wood sort of aesthetic design cases? I know other brands are doing it. Just want to know your thoughts on that. Some other changes here. This cover is now solid, it's not mesh. That does help with the airflow in the case, because when that is ventilated, it does disrupt the airflow. On the front here, it's very interesting. There's a few levels of dust protection. I was told 3. So the front has a dust filter that pops out. Then there's an actual button on the top that controls the 2 included 170mm, they're 30mm thick fans. So there's a button that actually reverses the fan blades, and that's meant to blow the dust out. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. It's going to be interesting to test. So that's one way of removing dust. And then the third dust layer protection is on the inside. They have magnetic dust filters as well. So they're really sort of gearing towards dust filtration on the front. So moving on the inside, it actually looks like this only supports ATX, but a neat little trick is this tray here can be flipped around 360, and that moves this grommet from this side over to the other side, and then that does allow for eATX support. And then once again, your back connector support is all included. I think that's included on most of these cases from LIAN Li. That seems to be the shift they're going for, so you can fit non-back connect and also back connect as well. And then they have the motherboard anti-sag bracket, which a lot of cases here are doing. Over here we have the Lancool 207. Now this is a very affordable price. It comes in at $79.99 US, which is pretty good, I think. You're getting a lot here. Now what they told me, this is an MATX size case, so it's got the dimensions of a standard MATX chassis, but it is installed with an ATX motherboard. Now you might be wondering, how have they done that? That's because there's a bit of shuffling around with the interior of this chassis. If I remove this front mesh, the motherboard area below has been sunk down a little bit. The PSU has been moved from the rear all the way into the front, and you can see that in here. So by doing that, by sinking that down a bit, you have access to fit an ATX motherboard. It doesn't support eATX because obviously there's so much they can do in a case this size. And I'll get some shots of the back. So the PSU is rotated 90, because if they did it the other way, normal way, it'd be very hard to install the cables in each side, but by rotating it 90 and having this cover, you have access to your power switch and your power plug, and then on the back side, you have access to plug in all your cables as well. So this is it over here. It gives us a little bit of a better idea on how they've actually done that, and I actually think this idea is brilliant. It could even come down to being some different type of form factor or how it's done, and of course at the top it will fit a 360, which we saw, and this one comes with pre-installed 2 fans, and they are 160 millimeters. Now, if you remembered our Computex coverage last year, LIAN LI were talking about a wireless RGB ecosystem, and now it is finally here. So obviously it can't be 100% wireless because you do need to power your fans. You need to get power to them somehow. So the way that's done is we have your standard LIAN LI connector. It's been modified, so this will connect to your fans. Once again, I'll get some close-ups. Connected to your fan, and this cable has a standard fan header on it. Now don't get confused here. This is not a PWM to control the fans. This is simply to power the fans in the run. So this one here is run. This cable simply goes back and it can be powered off your motherboard. It can be powered off a standard fan hub, a fan splitter, or something like that. So if you're running a bunch of these, you may end up with 3 of these in your case. You can run them to your motherboard, or they will supply something like a fan splitter just to get the power. And that is all you need. So that is one end of the wireless system. For the other end, this is I'll probably call it a dongle, the controller, and that's what controls everything to the fan. So this can either plug into the rear standard USB port, plug it into your keyboard, plug it in anywhere you want. That'll allow you to control the fans through the software. So there's no more L-Connect hub, nothing like that. And I spoke to the guys at LIAN LI, and they're probably saying that that could be the future direction they're going to remove their hubs from the system completely. Now, you might be thinking, well, do I have to have this sticking out the back of my computer? No, you don't have to, because you can run it off an internal USB header, and you're just going to have to move this somewhere else out of sight, because obviously this USB will be replaced by the USB you plug into your motherboard. And I suggested maybe have a cap that you can plug into that, so it just cleans it up a little bit. Now, the only downside with running the USB on the back of your computer is you won't get PWM control unless you want to run a cable back inside. So to get PWM control, you need to plug in the USB, and then the PWM fan header for that one. Now, moving on to these fans, you might be thinking, hey, these look a little bit different. This is the SLV3. So the main difference for the lighting is they had 2 sets along the side. So they have the larger diffused strip, top and bottom, and then they have a smaller diffused strip sort of closer to the middle, and they can all be individually controlled. And then we also have the STRIMER V3 as well. They look very similar, but the main difference is they work with this RGB ecosystem as well. So they use the wireless setup to connect it back to the hub. Now, just a little bit more on these SLV3 fans. As you can see, you might be wondering, hey, why do they have the LCD one in the middle and then they have 2 non-LCDs either side? That's because these new SLV3s, they come in TL, non-TL, they come in reverse, they come in normal flow, they come in white, they come in black, but this time you can mix and match TL with non-TL. So this time you don't need a whole bank of 3, either non-TL or TL for the LCDs, and you can just run the single LCD in the middle there like that, and you don't have to go with other LCD fans that are wasted, or you might not be able to see them properly like this one in the middle. Now, one last thing I do want to mention is how many fans can you actually run off this wireless RGB system? So in terms of how many you can daisy chain together, that is 3. Now, I spoke to the guys, and if we can try and push 4, that would be really good, because anyone running a 480 radiator, you're going to have 3, then you're going to have a single fan spun around, and you'll have to run that on its own channel as well. So you can fit 3 together, and then in terms of how many fans they can support off here, that is 8 channels. So you could have 8 of the 3 banks. You could have 3 banks, 3, then 3, then 3, basically 8 times. So that's a maximum of 24 fans you can run off this wireless controller, which I think is pretty good. This here is the HydroShift 360 all-in-one cooler. Now, this comes in 3 models. It comes in the high performance one that has a slightly higher performing pump for better performance. Then it has an RGB version, and then it has a version that has the TL LCD fans in the center. This one here is the RGB version, which obviously just isn't lit up at the moment. But once again, I'll put all those in the description so you can see the exact price and so on for those. But the main change, or the difference with this type of all-in-one cooler, is how the tubing is laid out. It runs down the top here, around the side with some clips, and then you put this cover over the top that completely hides it. So instead of a traditional all-in-one cooler that comes out here, and then you have your tubes go over normally your memory, and it just goes over the motherboard, and it makes it a little bit messy. Now this was covered at the LIAN LI Expo earlier this year, so you might have seen that there, and you might be wondering, hey, when this is coming out, but it looks like it's coming out sooner. I'll put any ETAs in the description, and you can just see, I'll get some close-ups, the glass is probably reflecting, but when you look at this from this angle, there are just no tubes at all, because how it's done, it runs along the back, along the side, and then it just comes out the top, kind of like if you're doing a soft tube run for a custom PC build, and they're just dropping in, and that's it. So it makes it very clean and out of sight. Now, lastly, we're going to take a look at the LIAN LI has collaborated with Signal RGB, and they have now built in the RGB system using Signal RGB. Now you do have to have Signal RGB installed, but then you can control the lighting through the Connect 3 software. So the advantages of that with Signal RGB, you don't have to worry about things like your motherboard software, your memory software, GPU RGB software. Everything here is just running through Signal RGB and Connect. So we have some standard themes running now. I think this one is Black Panther. As you can see, it's purple. It might be looking a bit overexposed. It might be white on camera, but let's change something to this lightsaber dual. I just hit play, and that has changed everything in that system. The motherboard, all-in-one cooler, memory, the GPU, the fans, everything is done. Let's change this one to coral. This one looks pretty cool, and look at that, done. Everything is changed, so that's a neat feature there. Now, another thing I wanted to cover is in Connect 3, we can have a little on-screen display information. There it is, minimize that, and that's it there. I'll get some close-ups. I can make this bigger and smaller like so, and this can be on top of the program and so on, and it just shows you some information on your system. It's not going to do too much. If I close this one, sorry, this mouse is very sensitive, I can hit the plus and I can go to things like GPU temp, CPU temp, CPU wattage, network and RAM load, and things like that, and then I can also make it transparent. Obviously this is quite early in development. Things could be changed, maybe like the level of transparency. You might, instead of having it 100% clear like that, you might want a slight grey background or so on. But I'm sure the feedback from you guys would be nice on how they can change this. What are your thoughts? I do like how you can make it larger and smaller. This would be great for things like where I add my little screens and custom builds around the PSU shroud, anywhere in the build. A lot of issues I have when adding these monitoring displays is you cannot resize them. This one, I can simply just grab it, the mouse is so sensitive, and just change it to whatever screen I'm using, and I can just fill up the whole screen that is required. Now that's it at the LIAN LI Computex 2024 booth. Now I'm really keen to see how well this RGB wireless implementation is going to go, see how far LIAN LI can push it into their other products. We know their fans, their STRIMER, maybe things like all-in-one coolers, because we all know all-in-one coolers use the USB normally for the screens and to get power. So if we can actually change that to run off something else, like the wireless system, that'd be really super. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank LIAN LI for letting us take a look at all this gear, and we'll see you in the next one.